I'm pleased to be joined by the Chief Executive Officer and Vice Chairman of Barnes & Nobles, Steve Riggio. Welcome to CityWide.
Nice to be here.
So when I was growing up in New York, Barnes & Nobles was the store in Lower Manhattan that you went to get a textbook that you couldn't find at your local bookstore.
Right.
Now it's a national brand. What happened?
In the mid-'60s, my brother Len, who was the chairman of the company and the founder, got into the book business. He was working in the NYU bookstore, which was downtown servicing NYU students. And he felt the desire to get into the business on his own, set up his own bookstore, and he did so on Waverly Place in 1966, and built a very, very great independent bookstore in the 60s. It was a fantastic store. And he was very, very determined to make sure the kids had the books on the day of their classes and that they check in and out of the store very quickly. It was a store known for its tremendous selection and great service, and became a very successful independent bookstore. And he went on to manage other college bookstores in the greater New York area. In 1971, Barnes & Noble, which was an institution dating back to the 1930s, indeed even back to the 19th century, was available for sale. It was run down and it was not doing particularly well, and he bought it. And from there grew a great national franchise.
Well, in some ways, the company caught the wave of the post-war kids that were going to college. College education became much more common, and they had the needs. But you've also developed a different concept for what a bookstore is.
Right.
And that's a more recent, I guess, adventure that the company's been embarked on.
That is true, but at the heart of it was always our mission to make bookstores more accessible to people. Even back in the early 70s, when we bought the original Barnes & Noble, the store existed in a factory district. That's all that was around there. There wasn't many high-end fashionable retailers as you'd find today. And our typical clientele was working-class New Yorkers looking for textbooks. And they'd come in and they'd buy textbooks for themselves, or maybe their parents would come in and buy them for their kids. And we found that they were looking for other things. And they were looking for books on, you know, how to expand their own horizons. We always say we serve the aspirants. And we began to build larger inventory in that store. And it became a great general bookstore. And over the years, we found that that concept could work in other places other than New York City. And we began to add on amenities such as the cafes and the great comfortable seating that people enjoy, and the many events that go on and on. So they've become community centers and kind of cultural anchors in many of the communities across America.
People thought it was a risky strategy to allow folks to come in, sit down, read a book, have a cup of coffee, not have to pay for anything else. Was it as big a gamble as was perceived at the time?
I don't think you can consider the modern generation Barnes & Nobles as something that emerged overnight. And I think one must understand it was many, many years of us serving customers through our college bookstores and through our stores in the New York area to find out what exactly were the right ingredients to make it work. What should the size of the store be? Where should it be located? You know, what should it feel like? And, you know, what kind of service, you know, do we need to build the business? And when the modern generation store emerged, however, the big store, most people thought we were crazy. They didn't think it would work.
Well, it's also the big stores, the superstores, came on the scene at a time when a lot of commentators thought that reading was going out of fashion. Everybody was watching television, and people, you know, literacy was down. And I mean, does the success of the chain, you know, disprove those commentators?
You know, they've been talking about the decline of reading since we've been in the business in the 70s. And they've been talking about the effect of video games on people's leisure time, particularly kids' leisure time, since the late 80s and early 90s. Yet the book business through that entire time has continued to grow. And we believe part of the reason it has grown is because we've brought bookstores out, across the country, into communities, into places like Anchorage, Alaska, and Fort Collins, Colorado, and Springfield, Missouri, and many small towns that never had access to bookstores. So we think that by making books more accessible, we've managed to build the market.
There's also concern that as a category killer, as
Yes.
the retail phrase, that you would have an impact on independent bookstores and basically put them out of business. So is that true that actually happened in New York, or was it more going into markets that were underserved to begin with?
I think the overwhelming evidence is that we expanded the market greatly by going into underserved markets, indeed underserved communities within a market. If you just look at what we've done here in New York City, 3 of our biggest volume stores are just 2 blocks from each other. One on Union Square, one on Fifth Avenue, and one on Chelsea. So we've always recognized that, there was an opportunity to expand the market. I think some people have claimed that those stores have put others out of business, but one would have to ask the question, well, what would you expect us to do? Should all the bookstores in America just stay still? We're just like any growing business. We expand where we see the opportunities, and there are lots of great booksellers out there putting stores next to other booksellers. So.
And they've also, I think you've had an impact, the Strand, changing the way it organizes its store. Other stores have tried to mimic having a place for kids to play and so forth.
Right.
And I suspect that in the sort of the more publicized, the ones they make the movies about, that the demographics and economics of a neighborhood were changing, whether Barnes and Nobles moved into there or not. You may come into a neighborhood because you sense that there's an affluent base that can buy your product, but that's a reflection of other things that are going on in the neighborhood as well.
And we typically locate our stores in power retail shopping centers next to other large retailers, great retailers such as Best Buy, and Bed Bath & Beyond, and Target. So we typically go where the real estate developers are investing money, and they typically want a national brand, someone that they know can bring the families and the people with education and affluence.
So here's an example of a book or an author that has stimulated interest in reading, and that's the Harry Potter phenomena. And in the neighborhood where I live, when there's a new Harry Potter book, it isn't just a book going on sale, it's actually a phenomenon. Kids dressing up and being down there. How do you prepare for something like that?
We have 40,000 people that work for the company that get ready for that one. And in July 16th of this year, in 2005, the next Harry Potter will go on sale. And this is the only book that we will actually begin selling at midnight, at 12:01 actually. So the pent-up demand for this book is probably unprecedented. It's on the scale, its gross sales are on the scale of a major Hollywood blockbuster. That's good for the business. And I think that it has caused kids of all ages, if I can use that broad term, to get into the series and then to go on to other books. So we wish there were many more J.K. Rowlings.
There have also been stories recently, and I'm sure over the years, about the social scene at the store, of a place for young professionals to meet other young professionals. It's assumed at least you can read. If you're there, it's some indication of intelligence. Is that something that you consciously cultivate as part of your marketing strategy?
I think it came as a byproduct of our mission to make bookstores non-intimidating. We didn't intend for people to have their weddings in our store, but these things have occurred. And many people have met their lifelong mate in a Barnes & Noble. And it speaks to our unwavering desire, mission, intent to make bookstores places where people feel comfortable. It's about making them feel comfortable. If you go back to the 60s and early 70s, you wouldn't dream, if you were a working class person in New York City, you were from the suburbs, you wouldn't dream of walking into a bookstore. It wouldn't cross your mind. And if you did, you would be intimidated. The chances are you would be intimidated. Firstly, it was most stores then were small, limited selection, and albeit difficult to even browse. You know, you might go in there and ask for something, but...
Bookstores were for hardcover books, drugstores were for paperback books.
Yeah, you know, so we really wanted to shatter that. And it really began, it began in the 70s. It evolved into today's modern generation, Barnes & Noble with the cafe, but the cafe came later. The cafe was one point in our evolution of bringing books to America across the country.
CityWide will continue right after this.
Are your kids getting enough art? Whether through poetry, dance, music, or drama, the arts open the doors to creativity. As a mother and teacher, I know that arts education can help our children develop confidence and a better understanding of the world around them. Even if you have just 30 minutes a week, get your kids more involved in the arts and think about the kind of world we can leave behind for our children and our children's children.
Art. Ask for more. AmericansForTheArts.org.
Welcome back to CityWide. We're speaking with Stephen Riggio, the CEO and Vice Chairman of Barnes & Noble. We were talking about making bookstores and reading accessible, and I want to ask you whether you think that the pendulum could go too far in the other direction from sort of the elite image that bookstores had. There's been some suggestion that the emphasis on celebrity authors leads to, some people might say it's a flight to quality, but other people would say it's a dumbing down, that the reliance on bestseller lists, or if you get to a certain level, if Tom Clancy or John Grisham comes out with a book, it's going to hit the bestseller list, whether it's any good or not. And that by catering to what's acceptable and familiar to people, that you're actually doing the market a disservice. What do you think?
Well, these are myths, very, very big myths. As a matter of fact, less than 4% of our total sales are from these mega best-selling authors. As a matter of fact, the sales in our stores from small and mid-sized publishers have actually grown as a percentage of our sales over the last decade, which means we've given voice and shelf space and the availability of many more diverse writers and ideas to our customers. There are a little over 1 million books in print, and we have actually sold about that many individual books. So these are myths, and I don't know how any other way to dispel them than to go on shows like this and to tell the actual facts.
So how do you decide which books that you're going to sell? Do you go to book fairs, or do you get pitched by individual publishers?
You know what's interesting? In our first book superstore concept, which debuted in the late 80s, the store was about 10,000 square feet in size. And people thought we were crazy to open a bookstore of 10,000 square feet.
How are you ever going to fill it up?
Now, how are we going to fill it up? You know, people don't read that many books. There's too many available. There's not that many available to put on the shelf. Then we moved it up to 15,000 feet. And I'll never forget the first time we debuted one of our modern generation stores. It was back in St. Paul in Minnesota in 1991. And we were a little nervous about it because it was the first time we went out there way outside of New York City with a big store. And it was 15,000 feet with 100,000 titles on the shelf. We worked day and night to get the store ready. We opened the doors opening day, and some of us were nervous. But the minute we opened those doors, the customers came in, and I knew we had a winner. But it was only 15,000 feet. Today our stores are 26,000 square feet. So how does one decide? I mean, we buy just about every book that is published and represented somewhere in the company, whether it be in our stores, or, and the great thing today is the internet has enabled us to make more books available.
I'm going to ask you about that in a second. I want to know, is censorship an issue? Do you come under pressure from political groups in one place or another not to carry books? Are you sensitive? Walmart will decide not to carry a magazine or something because of the content.
I think that our stores sometimes become battlegrounds for cases of the First Amendment, but because people object to what we stock or what we don't stock. But I think that if you look at our long track record of representing books that are published, I think you'd find that we've done a very good job of distributing as wide a selection as we can.
And if somebody walks into your store, they know they're going to be seeing things as opposed to going to a department store where they're not necessarily in the mood for new ideas. Are there big differences between what sells in different parts of the country? Because this is a New York show, is the New York market different from the market in other places?
Well, within New York City, in Manhattan, from block to block, there are vast differences. Our store at 82nd and Broadway sells a different, selection of books mix than at 67th and Broadway. That's the amazing thing of how local book selling is. It's amazing to watch, and we have lots of folks studying this, not just from state to state or market to market, but within communities. We have one or two stores, so that's our job, is to serve the community, and our store managers have a lot of responsibility to get what they need to their customers. It's not centrally determined.
New York also has I think a unique demographic now, which is that 40% of the city is foreign-born. Right. And do you sense that in terms of what your customers are looking for in New York City?
Well, I think yes. As the population changes and as the mix of a bookstore is a kind of organic organism. It's a business that responds to what people are asking for. And whether it be Bayside, Queens, or Staten Island, or Upper West Side, or Park Slope, Brooklyn, each of those managers, has a pulse and beat on their own customer base. And they do make changes, very definitely. That's why we're successful here. And that's the way you make a business grow here in New York, is certainly with such a amazing amount of change going on. New neighborhoods emerging, new businesses coming in, we're very vital to that.
What has the internet meant for your business?
Well, the internet's been great for us because it's enabled us to reach customers when they can't reach us. And we've gone to particularly great lengths to serve our New York City customers. You can order a book from barnesandnoble.com up till 11 o'clock in the morning and get it delivered same day if you live in Manhattan. And we've had that service for about 3 years now.
It's not just a gimmick, people actually use it?
Well, it's not a gimmick, it works. So try it, it works. So, our ability to deliver just about any book you could possibly imagine within the day, is something we probably didn't conceive, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But it is a natural extension of what we've always wanted to do.
So what's the next step? There a lot of technologists, futurists talk about direct publishing, of going, cutting out the publisher and printing the document out on somebody's desktop or into their computer directly. Are books on their way to being obsolete?
I think you'd certainly envision a time in the near future, or as we are seeing it, where information and all types of information is becoming increasingly accessible through the internet. And as Google is demonstrating now, they're going beyond web pages and archiving the content from university libraries. As far as physical books go, we think that people want to own books. They want to hold a physical product. They want to own it in their library. And there are so many types of books that cannot be translated to that medium. Just think of children's pictures books, or cookbooks, or gardening books, or design books. And
plus,
it's very difficult.
Paper's a great storage medium.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But, you know, we think that books are a lifestyle choice, and people love to own them, and they love to build libraries in their homes. And it's a reflection of what they're interested in and who they are. And we don't think that'll ever really go away. Certain types of information may migrate to the internet, but we don't think that it will make the bookstore obsolete. On the contrary, it may spur interest in reading.
Let me ask you about the lifestyle question. So I've got in my wallet here, I've got my Barnes & Noble card.
That's right.
What does it mean that I'm a member of Barnes & Noble's? I'm a customer,
right?
You know, but
well,
what does
you're
it mean
entitled
to be a member?
Get a discount on everything you buy.
Okay, but
So
that means
that's-
I'm a preferred customer.
Sure, we call it member.
Yeah, but are you trying to tell me that I'm part of a community? Is that is there a message in how you phrase that?
We prefer the word member because it enables us to differentiate ourselves from some of the common marketing programs that are out there, be it preferred membership clubs or frequent flyer. We just like the language better. Okay. You know.
Is New York still the center of publishing?
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, and as an industry, is it strong here? Are we under attack? I mean, if you're the city of New York, printing. I mean, the physical printing has
Right.
largely left the city. There were days when Soho was all printers, and that's mostly now either been replaced by desktop publishing at the low end or by higher end stuff outside of New York City. But the buying and selling of books, the identification of authors, does New York have competition within the United States for that industry?
Well, if you define the center as of a certain type of publishing, which you know are commonly what you see on the bestseller list, it's largely dominated by 5 publishers. We don't necessarily think that's a good thing, as over the past decade there's been tremendous consolidation in the industry, and most of the major publishers are now owned by media conglomerates, some foreign-owned. That remains to be the case, yet, as I said in my earlier comment, there's a vibrant publishing marketplace all around the country, if indeed around the world. Small publishing companies are emerging everywhere as we speak. But the concentration for what you talk about is general trade book publishing. I still think it's in this town today.
My thanks to Stephen Riggio, the CEO and Vice Chairman of Barnes & Noble. That's all for this edition of CityWide. I'm Ken Fisher. Thank you for joining us.